Hello everybody. I will be giving you an overview of the PsychWriter software from start to finish and how you can use it to generate your reports faster and with less errors. The first thing you want to do is create a new patient. You can click Add New Patient, and there's also an icon on the left to add a patient. You can enter in the first and last name, the gender, and date of birth, and it automatically calculates the current age. And there's some other fields here that you can fill out, but the other three required ones are the pronouns. And here you can enter in the parents and guardians if you wish, the relationship. Next would be the reason for referral, and then click Submit. At this point, it's taking you to the patient profile page. This is where you can see an overview, and this is where you will manage everything relating to this patient. We also have patient notes at the bottom. These are for internal use only, so if you want to take notes or put any suggestions to anybody else working on this case. And so the way that PsychWriter works is you work from left to right and just go through the tabs. So the first tab you would start with is the background of this patient. And this is where you can enter in the family history, birth history, social history, health history. Some of these have a checklist that will help aid and generate these narratives for you. So for instance, with the health history checklist, we can say that the patient has a pre-existing medical condition, and that would be migraines and also epilepsy. When you click populate narrative with checklist, it automatically populates the narrative. And depending on the checklist, it might generate more text, but it depends on the section. You can go ahead and click save after that. Next would be the test section. I'm actually going to jump over to a patient I've already created in the past. And this is the patient that's created by default when you create a new organization with us. So when you go to test, you can click add test on the top right. And here you can search for any of the tests that we currently support. If you don't see a test that you want support for, let us know and we'll go ahead and add it. So for now, I'll just go ahead and add the GORT5. You can click add. On the first time you load this test, it will ask you to add an examiner. And so examiners are important in case you have multiple administrators during the test. And if that person did not write the report, you wanted to note who administered that test. In this case, I have one examiner named my examiner name. You can put the administration date and the start and end time if that's important to the results. Here you can go ahead and just quickly enter in the scores. You can see you can automatically classify them. That's an easy example. If we look at some other tests, such as the Woodcock-Johnson oral language, this test requires a standard score and also RPI score. So we have capability to handle those kinds of tests. If we look at the Wisconsin card sorting test, this one also will be a good example to show you how it classifies standard scores. If you go over and you enter in the wrong score, let's say 200, it says invalid score. And if you put into a number that's not valid, such as 0 for a standard score, that won't let you submit it either. We also handled all sorts of standards, such as percentile ranks. And for these examples, here are some of the valid options. Click Save on that. We also support a variety of rating scales and surveys, such as the NPC. When you want to add a survey or rating score, you'll click Add Test, type in the test name. In this case, I already have an NPC added. It will then take you to a survey manager. Inside the survey manager is where you can add a new form for this test. So in this case, we have Mrs. Doe answer the NPC form. If we want to add another one, you can click Add NPC. In the case of NPCC, we can actually do external raters, which means that it will send a link to the rater and they can fill it out on their computer, and then it will automatically add that data to this sample patient. So if we want to add a rater, we can click Add External Rater, type in the name, and this would be their email address, add email. When you click Add Rater and Send Invite Email, it will send an invite email to this person, and they can fill out the survey there, hit Submit. When they hit Submit, this will be moved to completed status, and their data will be shown here. Let's go ahead and delete that for now. If we go ahead and look at the NEPSI, NEPSI is a little more complicated. You can see that this can be handled and handled just fine, and you can create the age comparison groups and the confidence interval is used to help automate the confidence intervals. For example, for effect recognition, if with a scaled score of 10, that would be a confidence interval of 8.29 to 11.71. On the actual generated report, this will round to the nearest whole number. You can see we handle the clinical groups if you want to compare to clinical groups, and we have the appropriate ones here. And we have this for each of them as well down there. The next main tab is the report writer. This is when you would start writing the narratives for your patient. This follows the integrated SNP CHC model. So it starts with the test observations, and then it moves into each of the domains such as basic sensory motor functions, learning memory, all the way to general intellectual functioning, to social emotional functioning and adaptive behaviors, and lastly, summary. So if we start with the basic sensory motor functions, the way this is laid out on the report writer tab is it shows you the table, which in this case the table is sensory motor functions from the NPCC3, and then you can view all the data here associated with that. Here is where you can enter in the narrative for this table. And one of the cool features with PsychWriter is the ability to have templates that are predefined, and that's what we're calling a narrative manager. In the case of a narrative manager, this is a piece of text that can be reused across multiple patients. So let's say this is, let's just say good. We can also enter in short codes to auto-populate based off the patient data. So for instances such as their first name or their pronouns, subjective, objective, or possessive. So I'm just going to make some very basic ones here. So it says first name did well. If I had another one called bad, if I click save on that, I now have two templates. So no matter what patient I'm on, I can always insert this into the narrative. Over here is where you can actually select the narrative. So you can see here's the names that we just created. One was called good, one was called bad. If I enter in the good, you can see it auto-populates it into the narrative box, and it replaces the first name with the actual patient's name, which in this case, the patient's name is sample. If I click on the bad one, it says sample did not do well. So over time, you can build up these narrative templates for each of these tables, and you'll have a really robust suite of templates to easily populate the narratives. Here's another example for fine motor functions. You can also hover over some of the table names and it'll tell you more about what that actually is. And in this case, we can use our narrative templates also. And you do this for the entire section, and so you'll go table by table writing the narratives. At the end of each section, you have the domain summary. So this is a summary of all basic sensory motor functions. And this is where you can enter in the narrative for the entire section. And again, you can use the templates. If you ever feel like you don't need to write the narratives at the time and you just want to look at the data, you can switch to tables only, and that will remove all the narrative boxes and narrative managers. So in this case, we're only looking at the data now, and you can do that for each section. You can look through quick and easy. The next section is the recommendations, diagnostic impressions, and the strategies and recommendations. Here again, you can use the checklists that we have created to help populate this section. And also you can make use of the templates here that you can add templates to here. The next step is to export the report. We have two exports that are supported, such as Microsoft Word and also PDF. We have a few report formats, such as a full report. This will show everything, or tables only shows tables, narratives only. Or if you want to have the narratives at the top and do more of a appendix in the back. You can then select the report date and whether or not you want to include qualitative behaviors. If you're trying to shorten your report and qualitative behaviors are not important, this will remove all those tables and narratives that fall under qualitative behaviors. You can decide if you want to include confidence intervals or not. And again, a lot of these are automated. And whether or not you want to include subtest descriptions or not. For now, we'll keep it off. This is where you add the signatures for this report. In this case, I want the examiner called my examiner name to be a signature at the end of the report. At this point, you can click export to PDF or export to Word. And if you wait a few moments, this is going to go ahead and table all the data and classify it even across different standards. It's going to insert all the narratives into the report and all the background information and recommendations information. So this is what a generated report would look like. We have the identifier information at the top, and then the basic sensory motor functions next. And here's all the narratives. And you can see if we scroll to the bottom, we have an appendix with all the table data. If I were to select just tables only, and let's do export to Word this time. Open that up. You can see that it's only showing the table data here. It's giving you the identifying information, and then it's only giving you all the table data. And you can see we also have the ability to generate graphs. So this report is only 16 pages instead of 32 when you remove all the narratives. So that's how you use PsychWriter Pro from start to finish, from creating a new patient, to writing the background information, to adding tests, to writing the narratives, lastly the recommendations, and then clicking export. This should save you time and reduce errors so you can focus on what matters most, your patients.